Hi there, my name is Christian Charlton and I am an acting instructor in the training department at Coast Mountain Bus Company. In this video, I am going to demonstrate the proper procedures for completing a pre-trip inspection on this vehicle, a Nova Hybrid. Watching this video numerous times will help you prepare for your ICBC road test. And on day 9, you will be required to successfully complete a pre-trip inspection on a vehicle like this one. Let's begin. I want to make sure I use 2 wheel blocks, and I want to make sure the vehicle can't roll in either direction. As I come to the rear of the vehicle, first thing I want to do is to check underneath for any overnight leaks. Then, looking at the overall condition of the engine compartment, I'm looking for visible leaks or signs of damage. Checking the fluid levels, oil, coolant, and all other fluids. The belts for tension and any that are cracked or worn. The hoses for leaks or bulges. I want to make sure that the governor and the compressor are secure, and also inspecting the main discharge line. Next, I want to test the one-way check valve. First, I'm going to close the drain cocks on all the air tanks. Then I'm going to enter the vehicle, start the engine, and build system air pressure. Shutting off the engine, I'm then going to come back and open the drain cock on the wet tank. Re-entering the vehicle, I want to check my primary and secondary air gauges to ensure that the needles are not moving. This will confirm that my one-way check valve is working properly. Then I will close the drain cock on the wet tank. Now I'm ready to begin my first walk around. As I walk around, I'm looking at all the window glass to make sure there are no cracks or chips. I'm looking at the body to make sure there is no damage that would affect the safe operation of the vehicle. Also making sure that the storage compartments are secure. I am going to check all the lenses, light housings, and reflectors to make sure they're in good working order. Starting at this corner, clearance light, the window, the lens, and the reflector. Checking the right side mirror, making sure it's secure and that the glass is intact. As I come around the front of the vehicle, I want to start at the top. Checking the clearance lights, the glass over the destination sign, and the windshield for any cracks or chips. I want to check that my safety inspection decal and my insurance decal are both valid and that the license plate is secure to the vehicle. Checking the windshield wipers for tension, condition of the blade, and that the nut is secure. Tension, checking the blade, and the nut. I'm going to lower the bike rack. And I want to check that my wheel holders and my welds are in good order. I'm going to leave the bike rack down because after I start the vehicle, I'm going to make sure that the telltale indicator on the dash is working properly. Looking at my indicators, low beams, high beams, and my bumper. At this corner, I want to look down the left side of the vehicle to make sure that all the emergency window exits appear closed. Checking the clearance light, the exterior camera, the window, the reflector. Checking the left side mirror, making sure it's secure and the glass is intact. Checking the driver's window. Compartment is secure. At the left front wheel, I want to check my indicator lights, my wheel molding, and my mud flap. Looking at the tire, I want to make sure that it appears inflated. On the surface, that there is not less than 3 millimeters tread depth and even wear. On the sidewall, cuts more than 2.5 centimeters, bulges or exposed cord. I'm checking the rim for cracks or dents. The lug nuts, I want to make sure that they are all there and that they appear tight. Looking for signs of rust spray which may indicate a loose nut. The grease cap, making sure it's secure and that there are no leaks. In behind the wheel, I'll check the foundation brakes. This includes the brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, linings, and drums. Also the airline, suspension, and steering mechanism. To check brake adjustment on a manual slack adjuster, I will use a pry bar and ensure that the push rod travel is between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch. At the center of the vehicle, I want to check my clearance light, reflector. I also want to look underneath the vehicle for any loose electrical lines, air lines, while checking the body mounts, frame, and structural supports. I'm also checking the driveline, differential, and rear axle. Coming to the left rear tire, I'm checking the indicator lights, wheel molding, and the mud flap. Looking at both tires, I want to make sure that they appear inflated. On the surface, that there is not less than 1.5 millimeters tread depth and even wear. And in between the tires for any obstructions. On the sidewall, cuts more than 2.5 centimeters, bulges, or exposed cord. Checking the rim for any cracks or dents. The lug nuts, I want to make sure that they are all there, that they appear tight, and that there's no signs of rust spray which may indicate a loose nut. The axle cover, making sure the bolts are all there, that they appear tight, and that there are no signs of any leaks. In behind the wheel, I'll check the foundation brakes. This includes the brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, linings and drums. Also the air lines and suspension. Now, to check brake adjustment on a manual slack adjuster, I will use my pry bar and ensure that the push rod travel is between 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch. Coming to the battery compartment, I want to make sure that the battery is secure, that the cables are attached correctly to the terminals, and that there's no signs of any leaks or corrosion. Making sure the compartments are secure. Looking at the top, making sure there are no obstructions over the exhaust, the clearance light, no obstructions over the air intake, and the reflector. As I come to the rear of the vehicle, I'm going to start at the top, checking the clearance lights, looking for obstructions on the vent, checking the rear window and the destination sign, looking at the indicator lights, the brake lights and the cyclops, the reverse lights and the reflectors. I want to check my yield to bus decal, my license plate light, making sure the license plate is secure and that it matches the one on the front, the rear compartment, and the bumper. At this corner, I'm going to look down the right side of the vehicle and make sure all the emergency window exits appear closed. Clearance light, reflector, checking the compartment, fuel door, making sure the fuel cap is secure. At the right rear wheel, I'm going to check the indicator lights, the wheel molding, and the mud flap. Looking at both tires, I want to make sure that they appear inflated. On the surface, that there is not less than 1.5 millimeters tread depth and even wear. And that there are no obstructions in between the tires. On the sidewall, for cuts not more than 2.5 centimeters, bulges, or exposed cord. Checking the rim for any cracks or dents. The lug nuts, I want to make sure they are all there, that they appear tight, and that there's no signs of rust spray which may indicate a loose nut. Looking at the axle cover, making sure all the bolts are there and that they appear tight, and that there's no sign of any leaks. Behind the wheel, I'll check the foundation brakes. This includes the brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, linings, and drums. Also the air lines and suspension. To check brake adjustment on a manual slack adjuster, I will use a pry bar and ensure that the push rod travel is between 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch. Coming to the center of the vehicle, I want to check the rear doors and make sure they're secure. Looking at my courtesy lights, clearance light, reflector. At this point, I want to look underneath the vehicle for any loose electrical lines, air lines. I'm also checking the body mounts, frame, structural supports, as well as the driveline, differential, and rear axle. Coming to the right front wheel, we're going to start by checking my destination sign, indicator lights, wheel molding, and mud flap. Looking at the tire, I want to make sure that it appears inflated. On the surface, that there is not less than 3 millimeters tread depth and even wear. On the sidewall, cuts more than 2.5 centimeters, bulges or exposed cord. I'm checking the rim for cracks or dents. The lug nuts, I want to make sure that they are all there and that they appear tight. Looking for signs of rust spray which may indicate a loose nut. The grease cap, making sure it's secure and that there are no leaks. Behind the wheel, I'll check the foundation brakes. This includes the brake chamber, push rod, slack adjuster, linings, and drums. Also, the airlines, suspension, and steering mechanism. To check brake adjustment on a manual slack adjuster, I will use a pry bar and ensure that the push rod travel is between 1/2 inch and 3/4 inch. If an adjustment is required on a manual slack adjuster, use a 9/16 wrench, push down on the locking collar, and tighten the adjusting bolt fully, ensuring that the camshaft rotates in the same direction as when a brake application was made. Prying on the slack adjuster to make sure it doesn't move. Then backing off the adjusting bolt 1/4 to 1/2 a turn. Then ensuring that the locking collar comes back up to the lock position and retest. As I come to the front of the vehicle, I'm checking my courtesy lights, making sure the doors are secure, and looking for any tripping hazards. Into the vehicle, I want to make sure all my mirrors are secure, also the camera housing, the sun visors. I'm going to check the vehicle documentation, make sure it's valid, and that the unit number matches the number above the windshield. The fire extinguisher, I want to make sure it's secure, that the inspection card is valid, and that the yellow seal is unbroken, indicating it has not been used. Also making sure the first 10 minutes pamphlet is there. At the front dash, I want to open the compartment with this button and check inside to make sure there is a scooter securement strap and a spill kit. Also, I want to look through the viewing window in the compartment below and visually confirm there are 3 emergency road triangles. Before entering the seat, I'll make sure it's secure and check that the seat belt is working properly. Now I'm ready to begin the startup procedure. Turning the master control to the night run position, I will ensure that the check engine light and alternator light both illuminate, and ensure that the wait to start light is turned off. Pressing the start button. After the engine is started, I will ensure that the check engine light and alternator light both turn off and remain off. Also, I want to check that the telltale for the bike rack is illuminated and activate the high beam, confirming that telltale. Then, pressing both turn signals at the same time, I will activate pre-trip mode. Now I'll begin my second walk around. As I walk around the vehicle, I want to make sure that all the exterior lights are working properly. Clearance light, kneeling bus light. Clearance lights, destination sign, indicators, low beams, high beams. Now I'll stow the bike rack. Clearance light, indicators, clearance light, indicators, clearance light is working. I see all my clearance lights are working, and I note that the 4 on the right are flashing, which indicate the layover lights are in good order. Destination sign, indicator lights. I see that both my brake and tail lights are working, and the cyclops, and the reverse lights. Checking the license plate light. And now that the engine is pressurized, I look again for leaks. Checking my clearance light, indicators. Checking the courtesy light, and at the rear door I'll check the sensitive edge. Destination sign, indicators, and the courtesy lights. Now I'll begin checking the passenger compartment, making sure all the advertising is secure and that there are no tripping hazards in the aisle. Behind the driver's seat is a vent tool. This must be used to open and close the forward ventilation hatch. This hatch can also be used as an emergency exit if necessary. I will be checking all my cameras, making sure they're in good order, that the stanchions are all secure, and testing all the passenger chimes. In the priority seating area, I'm going to ensure that all the seats will remain locked in the upright position. I'm going to test the accessibility chime and the courtesy lights on both sides. And then I'm going to test the securement straps. Using this latch, I'm going to pull back on the straps, make sure they are working properly, And I will test the seat belt to make sure it works properly. Then I'll make sure to leave all the seats in the down position. While continuing to check the passenger compartment, I'm looking to see that all the seats are secure and in good order. I'm looking for any sharp objects such as broken glass or needles. Also for lost property, graffiti, or vandalism. I'm going to check the rear chimes because it's on a separate circuit. The rear ventilation hatch. I'm going to make sure it works properly. This hatch can also be used as an emergency exit if necessary. I'm going to visually inspect the compartment for the rear door butterfly valve, the mirror, also checking the courtesy light on the stairs. I'm going to make sure that the green door active light is illuminated and test that the door works. Using my hand, I'm going to cover the sensor for approximately 3 seconds and test the sensitive edge with my foot, making sure the door cycles open properly. As I continue back to the cab, I'm going to ensure that the emergency window exits are all secure. Now I'll be checking the cab of the vehicle where the driver's workstation is located. I'll begin with the lower side console. This is the dimmer switch for the instrument panel. I can confirm that that's working. This is the parking brake. I can confirm the parking brake is applied because the parking brake light is illuminated on the dash. This is the operator assault alarm, emergency release, applied air for the front and rear doors. I can confirm that it's applied because it's responsive. Moving to the upper left console, this is the emergency drive stop override, start button, master control in the night run position. I'll test the fast idle. That's working. I'll test the emergency door open. Activating this switch opens the rear doors and applies the rear door interlock, which I can confirm by looking at the application gauge. While this is open, I will apply the door master switch, which closes the rear door and releases the rear door interlock. I will then turn off both switches. I'll test the arm alarm, noticing the yellow light on. Next stop request, tag video. This is the defrost for the side mirrors. These are my mirror controls, my door control. This is the bus kneeler. I'll activate this. And while I'm here, I'm going to be testing the ramp to make sure it lifts up to 9 degrees and back. And that's working properly. Okay. This is my 1/3 door switch. This is my 4-way hazard lights. I'm going to activate them and confirm that they work both on the dash and in both mirrors. Turning that off, I'm going to test my turn signals. The left side on the dash and in my mirror, and the right side on the dash and in the mirror. I'm going to activate the high beam light and confirm that the telltale indicator works on the dash. This is my hill holder. I'm going to activate that. I can see that I have air applied in my application gauge. Turning that off. This is my windshield wiper control. Activating the wiper fluid and testing all functions. This is my transmission selector panel, currently in neutral. System air pressure gauge, both primary and secondary. Application gauge, speedometer, ramp controls. I'll test the defroster for function. Steering wheel, testing the tilt, telescope, and horn. Moving to the upper switch panel. This controls the left side dash fan, right side dash fan, dome lights, passenger chime, driver's light, fare box light. The switches in this box control ventilation to the passenger compartment. Heat, fresh air, high speed, and low. This is the driver's vent, driver's fan, defrost for the door. Pressing this switch deactivates ATC mode. Pressing this switch again will reactivate ATC mode. This is the sweeper switch. Now I'm ready to test the air brakes on this vehicle. First, I need to ensure that the compressor is governor unloaded. I will apply 1/3 throttle and ensure that the needles on the system air pressure gauges are not moving. Then I will release the parking brake and ensure that the parking brake light on the dash turns off. Using the service brake, I will fan down to not less than 80 psi and ensure that the governor places the compressor into the loading stage. I will apply 1/3 throttle until I see the needles moving. I'll continue fanning down the service brake and ensure that the low air warning devices, both audible and visual, activate at not less than 60 psi. I'll continue fanning down to 30 psi to simulate a total system air loss and ensure that the parking brake applies automatically. I'll know this when the parking brake light illuminates on the dash. Now I will test the emergency air supply. Pushing down once on the emergency release valve and lifting on the parking brake valve, and I will ensure that the parking brake light on the dash turns off. Then, applying 1/3 throttle, I want to ensure that the compressor builds system air pressure from 50 to 90 psi in no more than 3 minutes. Making note of the time. I'll note that the low air warning devices deactivate as I build system air pressure above 60 psi. I'll continue building system air pressure and ensure that the governor places the compressor into the unloading stage between 105 and 135 psi. And it has. Next, I'll perform the leak test. Turning the master control to the night park position, I'll ensure that the parking brake is released by testing the parking brake alarm. I'll then make a full brake application of not less than 90 psi, and while watching the needles on the system air pressure gauges, I'll ensure that I lose no more than 3 psi in 1 minute, while also listening for leaks. Once that test is complete, I will apply the parking brake, test the parking brake alarm, and exit the vehicle. Now I'll retrieve my wheel blocks. Now I'll do some final checks. Entering the seat and putting my seatbelt on, turning the master control to night run, and starting the engine. Now, I'm going to close the door, make a service brake application, and put the transmission into drive. Then I'm going to release the parking brake. I'm going to make sure it's safe to move the vehicle, checking my mirrors from left to right. Then I will roll forward 5 kilometers an hour and apply a service brake application. Checking for response. Then I will roll forward and make a parking brake application. Again, checking for response and making sure there is no more than 10 centimeters play in the steering. And my final step, I will fill out and sign the vehicle daily status and pre-trip report. The pre-trip inspection of this vehicle is now complete. On day 9, you will have 45 minutes to successfully complete a pre-trip inspection as part of your road test. Thanks for watching and good luck.